All right, page 17, we continue with, from 17 to 23, we continue with how am I powerless over alcohol physically? And we'll turn statements into questions for ourselves. We'll bring our experience and let our experience answer these questions. It says, we of Alcoholics Anonymous know thousands of men and women who were once just as hopeless as Bill. Do you? Do you know people who were just as hopeless as Bill? And am I just as hopeless as Bill? That's a great question. Because it's going to give me a promise. If I'm as hopeless as Bill, and remember, hopeless wants to stop and stay stopped, but can't. If that's me, nearly all have recovered. I think those that are not as hopeless as Bill maybe have less of a chance. Or we have to get to that place by using this book as a tool. They have solved the drink problem. We are average Americans, all sections of this country, many of its occupations are represented, as well as many political, economic, social, and religious backgrounds. We are people who normally would not mix. Boy, what an understatement there. Hey, y'all drink too much. I want y'all to get into my whiskey. Do you find that to be true? We're people that normally wouldn't mix. We're like the passengers of a great liner. The moment after rescue from shipwreck, when camaraderie, joyousness, and democracy pervade the vessel from steerage to captain's table. And I was told that the steerage was the lower deck where the workers and all that stuff, and then captain's table was up at the top. Unlike the feeling of the ship's passengers, however, our joy in escape from disaster does not subside as we go our individual ways. Do you kind of feel like a part of the meetings and a part of AA goes with you out of here to your house? Does it keep coming back to you? The feeling of having shared in a common peril is one element in the powerful cement which binds us. Who in here has is alcoholic or a drug addict or some kind of problem with control? That's everybody, isn't it? So we have that part, and they're saying that sharing in a common peril is one element in this cement that binds us. And then they give me a warning. They say that in itself would have never held us together as we are now joined. If that was enough for us to be joined, and I felt joined at the bar when I was out drinking with people and doing other stuff, I felt a sense of camaraderie with those people. But that didn't solve the problem for sure, because that's just one element. Now, do I have this next element? The tremendous fact for every one of us is that we have discovered a common solution. So I need two parts of that cement, a common problem and a common solution. And they're going to ask me at step 5 to come back to this. So mark that. If you turn over to page, what is it, 75? Where it says down at the bottom of 75, it says, returning home, find a place where we can be quiet for an hour, carefully reviewing what we have done. We thank God from the bottom of our hearts that we know him better. Take this book down from the shelf, turn to the page which contains the steps, carefully read the first 5 proposals. We ask if we omitted anything. Are we building an arch through which we shall walk a free man at last? Is our work solid so far? Are the stones properly in place? Have we skimped on the cement? The cement that binds us is a common problem and a common solution. So down at the bottom of that, right, page 17, cement. Later on, we're going to come to a cornerstone. We can turn back to this page and put cornerstone. Then we'll have a keystone. So this has continuity. We have a way out on which we can absolutely agree, upon which we can join in brotherly and harmonious action. Do you? Do you agree with this way out? And can you join in brotherly and harmonious action with this path? Anyone? Yeah. Do you think this is great news? And do you believe this book can carry that news to you? An illness of this sort, do you believe that alcoholism is an illness? What is an illness? A condition that has definable symptoms. There are definable symptoms for alcoholism, and they're internal. They're not out here. They're not, well, I had the wreck and I screwed that up and I drank my business up, and that's not the that's not where the illness is. Alcoholism is in here, and we're looking at the physical part, which is internal. Alcoholism is not out there doing push-ups in the parking lot, because if it is, that's where I'm going to find my solution, and we'll chase it forever. Once I get the problem is in here, to have a physical reaction to alcohol, and there's a physical component to it, even when I'm not drinking. Once I get that, it's no longer out there. It's in here. So I have complete and total, my illness is accessible to me. I don't have to go chase it down or get you to change or pay me back or whatever the hell it is I'm trying to get you to do. This illness involves those about us in a way no other human sickness can. So that's the part where it's going to involve it, but the illness is in here. If a person has cancer, all are sorry for him. No one is angry or hurt, but not so with the alcoholic illness. For with this alcoholic illness goes the annihilation of all things worthwhile in life. Has that been your experience? Alcoholism engulfs all those whose lives touch the sufferer. Has that been your experience? Did this alcoholism bring misunderstanding, fierce resentment, financial insecurity, disgusted friends and employers, warped lives of blameless children, sad wives and parents? Anyone can increase the list. Has that been your experience? Now, why is that? It wasn't because I got drunk. That ain't why they left. It's because I got drunk and I stayed drunk. Couldn't stop. This physical craving for alcohol is the reason I was drunk. So I can literally tie all of these problems to that physical part, to that craving. That craving was driving me, and there's no getting over it. Once I put it in my system, my mind is not going to work to overcome that craving. I can wish to do the right thing all I want. I'm not going to do it. And I mean, I really cared for my family. I really cared about my business. Those fourth generation dairymen, and I could see it going down the toilet. I really did care. Damned if I could do anything about it. I couldn't do it. And I couldn't make that connection either, because nobody ever really told me about alcoholism. In fact, I was 9 months sober before I really knew what alcoholism was. But Carl said, well, what are you doing in AA? Well, that's a dumb question. I'm alcoholic. How you know? Well, nobody had ever asked me that, or asked me in a way that I could hear it. Oh, well, I got married in a blackout. I had these wrecks. I screwed my business up. I stayed drunk all the time, all of these things. They said, well, you could do that without being alcoholic. I could be a hard drinker and do those things. So I'm not going to look for my alcoholism in my circumstances and in my behavior. I want to look for my alcoholism internally. And that's a huge difference. And I finally, he got to a point where I had those three most difficult words for an alcoholic. I don't know. I don't know. So we hope this volume will inform and comfort those who are or may be affected. There are many. Highly competent psychiatrists who have dealt with us have found it sometimes impossible to persuade an alcoholic to discuss his situation without reserve. That was certainly true for me. Strangely enough, wives, parents, intimate friends usually find us even more unapproachable than do the psychiatrist and the doctor. And then it's got these italics, so it must be really important. It says, but the ex problem drinker who has found this solution, who is properly armed with facts about himself, can generally win the entire confidence of another alcoholic in a few hours. Until such an understanding is reached, little or nothing can be accomplished. So it's telling me all I really need is I need to know about me. I need to know about my experience. And I mean, that shouldn't be hard for an alcoholic. That's our favorite subject. Me. That's so, but it's telling me, that until this understanding and this connection based on the problem for certain, especially the physical part, when I first make this contact with an alcoholic, I want to really drill down on the physical part, that craving, because that's fresh in their mind usually. Usually they're just coming off a drunk or whatever. If they're at the hospital, they're in there because of this craving, and they can really relate to that. Um, they did not tell me about the craving. They said, "Well, we're going to try to get you to live first." Whenever they were detoxing me, um, that the man who is making the approach has had the same difficulties. Do you believe that I've had the same difficulty as you about physical alcoholism, the physical part? We'll skip this next part. So I don't know what I'm talking about half the time, but does my deportment shout to you that I'm a man with a real answer? And we'll skip that holier than thou part. Um, oh, if I do come across like that, it's not, I hope I don't. Um, I hope you understand that I have nothing whatever to except a sincere desire to be helpful. Um, I'm going to refund all of you that have paid up front. No fees to pay, no axes to grind, no people to please. This may seem like a lecture, but I invite you to participate. Tell me about your alcoholism when we get to these questions. Um, and I can even ask that. Do you feel like this is a lecture? Be honest about that. Nobody wants to be lectured to, least of all an alcoholic. Um, these are conditions we have found most effective. After such an approach, many take up their beds and walk again. Do you believe that you could go through this book study, use this book as a tool, do what it's asking us to do, and recover for what we're doing here? Because that is the aim. None of us make a sole vocation of this work, nor do we think its effectiveness would be increased if we did. We feel that the elimination of our drinking is but a beginning. Do you have that sense that it's just a beginning? A much more important demonstration of our principles lies before us in our respective homes, occupations, and affairs. Can I demonstrate these principles in those areas of my life? I'm going to need help with that. I'm going to need a power greater than myself to allow me to do that. I can be willing and I can do the work and I can gain access to this power through this process that will help me. But just to think that, okay, now that I know I've got to do these spiritual principle things, I've got to straighten up and fly right. Well, hell, they've been trying to get me to do that my whole life. The needed power wasn't there to do that. All of us spend much of our spare time in this sort of effort, which we are going to describe. Are you willing to do that? A few of us are fortunate enough to be so situated we can give nearly all our time to the work. If you keep on the way you're going, is there little doubt that much good will result? Are you doing better than you were? But the surface of the problem would hardly be scratched. I believe that. Those of us who live in large cities are overcome by reflection of close by hundreds or dropping into oblivion every day. If you took a 1 mile radius of even right here, do you believe there's alcoholics that are dying of alcoholism that don't know what we're doing here? Yeah. Many could recover if they had the opportunity that I've enjoyed. How then shall we present that which has been so freely given us? We have concluded to publish an anonymous volume setting forth the problem as we see it. Now, why wouldn't they set forth the solution?
Gotta know the problem first.
The solution's in the problem. We shall bring to the task our combined experience and knowledge. This is just a useful program for anyone concerned with the drinking problem. Are you concerned with the drinking problem, regardless of how long you've been sober? Of necessity, there will be discussion of matters medical, psychiatric, social, and religious. We are aware that these matters are, from their very nature, controversial. Nothing would please us so much as to write a book which would contain no basis for contention or argument. They've done real well, but there are some arguments I want to, every time I go through this, there's at least part of it that brings up this feeling in me like I'm against that, I'm against that because I always go a little bit deeper, a little bit deeper, a little bit deeper, and not on purpose. It just takes me there. We shall do our utmost to achieve that idea. Most of us sense a real tolerance of other people's shortcomings and viewpoints, and a respect for their opinions are attitudes which make us more useful to others. Well, see, I never got that was the aim. I thought happiness and being happy, joyous, and free was the aim. It says being useful to others. And then it gives us this thing. Do you believe that your life as an ex-problem drinker depends on the constant thought of others and how you may help meet their needs? Now, I don't go around, all day thinking about, other alcoholics, even though it asked me at the end of the day, I might want to consider that. Were you thinking about yourself or were you thinking about others? When I review my day. And I was told that this is more of a sense, more of like there's a sense of gravity. Well, I have a sense, this constant thought, this constant sense that this awareness that I might be helpful to an alcoholic or someone who's not alcoholic as an alcoholic. So that was placed in me. That I didn't just come up with that. That's not, that's not so. It wasn't what I was shooting for. That's for sure. But by going through this process, that has been instilled in me to some degree. And I can ask that: am I willing to do that? Am I willing to pay attention to the needs of others? Pay attention to what I'm doing and how I'm behaving and what my attitude's like and what my thought life is like and how my emotional nature is. Am I willing to do that? Not can I at this point, but am I willing? You may already be asking yourself, why is it that we have become so very ill from drinking? Doubtless you're curious to discover how and why, in the face of expert opinion to the contrary, we have recovered from a hopeless condition of mind and body. Are you? Are you alcoholic who wants to get over it? You may already be asking, what do you have to do? And then it says that it is the purpose of this book to answer such questions specifically. we shall tell you what we have done. Before going into detailed discussion, it may be well to summarize some points as we see them. How many times have people said to us, I can take it or leave it alone? Why can't he? Anybody ever heard that? Why don't you drink like a gentleman or quit? Anybody ever heard that one? That fella can't handle his liquor. Well, I've heard that one. Why don't you try beer or wine? Now, they didn't want me to try that. Lay off the hard stuff. His willpower must be weak. He could stop if he wanted to. Anybody ever heard that one? She's such a sweet girl. I'd think he'd stop for her sake. The doctor told him if he ever drank again, it would kill him. I've heard that one. But there I was, all lit up again. Now, these are commonplace observations on drinkers, which we hear all the time. In back of them is a world of ignorance and misunderstanding. We see that the expressions refer to people whose reactions are very different from ours. Those people who were saying this, is it not? I mean, I've come to, I don't know how many AA meetings. Nobody ever said, why don't you straighten up? Nobody ever said that to me. Nobody ever give me these, why don't you lay off the hard stuff? They didn't say that in AA. They didn't say my willpower was weak. They say it was non-existent. No, it's not there, Mark. Practically non-existent. Then it gives us these different kinds of drinkers. It says moderate drinkers have little trouble of giving up liquor entirely if you have a good reason for it. They can take it or leave it alone. Is that you? Can you take it or leave it alone? Huh? Would that something lead you back to alcohol eventually? And I mean, my own experience was, there were some other things, success for one, money, there were some other things. But it always led back to alcohol. And, it doesn't really matter how long it takes. It's going to be a shitty trip. That's for sure. That was my experience with it. Okay, then there's a certain type of hard drinker. That's the one I wanted to be. I may have the habit badly enough to gradually impair himself physically and mentally. I had that. It may cause me to die a few years before my time. Several years is what they told me. You're going to die if you drink. If sufficiently strong reason, ill health, falling in love, change of environment, or the warning of a doctor becomes operative. It did with me. Those things, they became operative. I had the warning of the doctor. I fell in love with myself only, but and a girl. So I had the change of environment. Although he may find it difficult and troublesome, he may even need medical attention. I had those things, but I didn't stop. I had the warning of the doctor. I had all those things. I did not stop. Has anybody ever had those good reasons for stopping and not stop?
Threats from the judge.
Oh, yeah, that's another good one. Well, what about the real alcoholic? He may start off as a moderate drinker. He may or may not become a continuous hard drinker. They're saying maybe I might not even drink as hard as a hard drinker. But at some stage of my drinking career, did I lose all control of my liquor consumption once I start? Boy, that really describes me. Absolutely. Do what?
Have the one.
Has anybody ever been able to, before you came to Alcoholics Anonymous, were you able to control it? Or did you reach a point where you couldn't control it once you started? Well, hey, couldn't control meth. Um, Here's the fellow who's been puzzling you, especially in his lack of control. Did you do absurd, incredibly tragic things while drinking? I've already told you some of mine. It was tragic. Um, he's a real Dr. Jekyll and Mr. Hyde, seldom mildly intoxicated. He's always more or less insanely drunk. That was me. My disposition while drinking resembles my normal nature, but little. Well, it kind of became normal for me to be drunk. People, they just said, well, that's how he is. Uh, I was not one of the finest fellows in the world. But you let me drink for a day, and I frequently become disgustingly, even dangerously antisocial. That describes me. I have a positive genius for getting tied at exactly the wrong moment. Particularly when some important discussion must be made or engagement kept. He's often perfectly sensible and well balanced concerning everything except liquor. That was debatable for me, for sure. I was not a well-rounded individual, just drank too much. Nothing about me was well-rounded. But in that respect, he is incredibly dishonest and selfish. Were you dishonest about your alcohol and selfish? When you were doing drugs, did you want to share it? No? He often possesses special abilities, skills, aptitudes, and has a promising career ahead of him. He uses his gifts to build up a bright outlook for his family and himself, then pulls the structure down on his head by a senseless series of sprees. At the age of 18, I built my own dairy, borrowed my own money, went in the dairy business, bought my own cattle, went up to Iowa, bought them, brought them back down. Had a promising future. Really, I did with that, and I certainly brought that down with a series of sprees. It didn't take long to get in it. It took about 10 years to get out of it. Drinking played a huge part in that. I was the fellow who goes to bed so intoxicated I ought to sleep the clock around, and sometimes I did. Yet early the next morning, he searched madly for the bottle he misplaced the night before. Anybody a morning drinker? Did you conceal it all over the house so that somebody wouldn't get you? You ever put it out in the garage and under the seat of the pickup and all kinds of stuff? As matters got worse, did you begin to use a combination of high-powered sedatives and liquor to quiet your nerves? Well, I use liquor, not so much the sedative. Then comes the day when I simply can't make it and get drunk all over again. Boy, that describes the last couple of 3 years of my drinking. I just didn't have the fight for it. Perhaps he goes to a doctor who gives him morphine or some sedative with which to taper off. He begins to appear at hospitals and sanitariums. Anybody ever been to a hospital or sanitarium? Did liquor take you there? This is by no means a comprehensive picture of a true alcoholic, as our behavior patterns vary. They're saying, your behavior pattern, don't look for alcoholism in your behavior. But this description should identify him roughly. Why does he behave like this? Now, why did you do that? That was a horrible question I was always getting. Why did you do that? Why'd you leave your truck running at the gas station, getting a pickup with people you didn't know and go to Mexico? Why'd you do that? Why? They called me at, at 1 o'clock at night, come get the goddamn pickup, And my dad's telling me this, I mean, what were you thinking? Well, I wasn't. They had cocaine and I wanted to go. Um, Well, I could have moved the truck, I suppose. I mean, that was my only mistake. Um, If hundreds of experiences have shown him that one drink means another debacle with all its attendant suffering and humiliation, why do you take that first drink? Why do you take the first drink? I mean, if you know that it's going to be a shit show and a dumpster fire, why do you take the first drink?
Physical craving.
Because it works.
Why can't you stay on the water wagon? It says, what's come of your common sense and your willpower that you display sometimes with respect to other matters? Perhaps there will never be a full answer to those questions. Opinions vary considerably as to why the alcoholic reacts differently from normal people. We're not sure why. At a certain point, once a certain point is reached, little can be done for him. We can't answer the riddle. We know that while alcoholics keep away from drink, as he may do for months or years, he reacts much like other men. So if I'm not drinking, I'll react like other, but in here, man, let me tell you, it's churning, buddy. Really churning. We are equally positive that once he takes any alcohol, whatever, into his system, something happens in both the body and the mind. Does that happen for you? Which makes it virtually impossible for me to stop. Is that been my experience? Impossible. The experience of any alcoholic will abundantly confirm this. Does it? Does it abundantly? Has this happened over and over and over for you? Okay, at the top, at this point, they're gonna switch topics. Up at the top, right, of 23, right, how am I powerless over alcohol mentally with none in my system? I always had this idea that it was being drunk that made me drink. But I never took the first drink drunk, ever. I was always at some point sober when I took the first drink. Maybe that's weeks or months. But at some point, the first drink I took, I was sober. These observations about the body would be academic and pointless if Mark never took the first drink, thereby setting the terrible cycle in motion. If you didn't take the drink, you didn't have a craving for liquor, did you? Body, physical craving. Physical. Right. Therefore, the main problem of the alcoholic centers in his mind. So from here on, you don't hear a lot about the body. They're going to talk primarily about the mind. And not the mind when I'm insanely drunk. They're talking primarily about the mind when I'm sober. The mind rather than his body. If you ask him why he started on his last bender, the chances are he will offer you any one of 100 alibis. Has that been your experience? If I don't have a reason for drinking, I'd be crazy. So I need to come up with one or an alibi. Sometimes these excuses have a certain plausibility, but none of them really make sense in the light of the havoc an alcoholic's drinking bout creates. Did your drinking bouts create havoc? They sound like the philosophy of a man who, having a headache, beats himself on the head with a hammer so he can't feel the ache. If you draw this fallacious reasoning to the attention of an alcoholic, he will laugh it off or become irritated and refuse to talk. Oh, here's a statement. Once in a while, Mark might tell the truth. Let's just pick that statement out of the book there. And the truth, strange to say, is usually that he has no more idea why he took the first drink than you have. Do you know why you take the first drink? Do you understand why? Not an excuse or a reason. Do you understand why? Some drinkers have excuses with which they're satisfied part of the time. I deserve it, you know, after a long day's work or hauling hay or whatever, you know. But in their hearts, they really don't know why they do it. Once this malady has a real hold, they are a baffled lot. Do you think this malady has a hold on you? And are you a baffled lot? There is the obsession that somehow, someday, they will beat the game, but they often suspect they are down for the count. There's the word obsession, and I would highlight that. And a good definition that I use for obsession is the thought that crowds out all other thoughts. So does alcohol or drugs, does that crowd out other thoughts? I turn my thoughts and I'm focused on work, and next thing you know, I'm thinking about going to Mingus, getting drunk or going to party or whatever it is. And then I get my focus back on work or family or whatever it is, and the next thing you know, I'm thinking about drinking again. It's the thought that crowds out all other thoughts. How true this is, few realize. In a vague way, their families and friends sense that their drinkers are abnormal. Is that true for you? But everybody hopefully awaits the day when the sufferer will arouse himself from his lethargy and assert his power of will. See, these people, family and friends, thought that I should have willpower. And even some people that I was drinking with, they were going, well, shit, we don't want to drink with you. There's no telling where we'll wind up. They were, drinking, maybe getting drunk, and going home, going back to work, doing all this stuff, and I'd be off over here somewhere. The tragic truth is that if a man be a real alcoholic, the happy day may not arrive. Have you lost control? I have lost control on whether or not I'll drink, and if I drink, how much I'll drink. At a certain point in the drinking career of every alcoholic, he passes into the state where the most powerful desire to stop is of absolutely no avail. Have you passed into that state? This tragic situation has already arrived in practically every case long before it's suspected. Does anybody have any experience with that they want to share with trying to stop and stay stopped and unable to do so? Go ahead.
Yeah, I've done it. Think you get control of it. I've done it for multiple years at a time. And just all of a sudden, and each time, it was longer and harder when, like this time I was, almost drank myself to death and ended up in the hospital. Went to nothing up at 22, I lost everything. Living out of a 77 Jeep Cherokee, back on with mom and dad, that I hadn't lived with since I was 14 years old. Each time the cycle is because I thought I think I'd have control or one or two won't hurt. And before I knew it, I'd been drinking another 3 or 4 years and was almost at rock bottom again, living out of my car, or lost my children. I have a son that's 33 years old, but still, maybe it'll be possible to make it amends someday, but, that, where it says, when you have I don't know if it's got, really got there yet. the special occasion, and we decided to have a few drinks, and the special occasion never happened. That was picking up on something in my visitation. So, you know, it's a relief, and it takes a long time to realize that.
Good.
Because I kept thinking, I could just,
Anybody else? Anybody ever stop and then wind up drunk?
Hey, Alfred.
3 years straight. I mean, I said, I'm stopping, I'm stopping. I just kept going. Finally, I just kept going. Kept going. Finally, I still just kept going. Like what Steph said, I'm drinking myself to death. I just got to that point, I couldn't do it no more. It's hard, but I got help. I got the help that I needed. I'm on the right path. Appreciate the sharing, taking the time, man. I'm wrapping up home.
Thanks, Alfred.
Mike, and I'm alcoholic. Who are you people? 3 weeks. That's all I can do. Not no years. That's for damn sure. Real alcoholic. All it took was just one little battle with anger, and I said, "Okay, I'm going back to what I do." And it was full throttle after that. No thought of the wreck, no thought of the reason I needed to stop. I wanted to stop. I tried to stop. All gone. That was my coming out from.
Thanks, Mike.
The only reason I ever stopped taking one little drink was just to get people to stop looking at me long enough so I could go to another drink. That was it. That's all I wanted. Just stop looking at me, stop giving me shit, so I can move on to my next drink.
Did anybody ever have the experience where you there had times, where I've decided, okay, I'm gonna go out and drink, get drunk or have a few drinks or whatever, and consciously make that decision. But there were also many times when there was no thought in it whatsoever. I mean, it was just there and I just drank it and then I was off. Why is that? Why would I do that knowing all the trouble that it had caused me? I mean, why? It was because of this obsession that they're talking about. Or, go ahead.
And graduated nursing school, and I'm doing really well. But I did on the inside, and you're talking about like, it was insatiable, like, I've been trying to go the whole. But anyway, when I read up for the 7 years, I stopped at the gas station on the way home, driving to Boston, but I bought 2 beers, and I really thought, y'all, that I had it with, because when I got home, I only drank those 2 beers, and I got home to work the next morning, and I didn't morning drink, and I was like this. I've got this thing with, like, I can really drink, and within 4 weeks, my nursing license was suspended, and I had my 3rd DWI. So that's how, the state starts working.
Did alcohol ever quit for you? It quit working for me. Long before I, got to Alcoholics Anonymous. It wasn't working. I just didn't have any other reason. I didn't have any other solution to what was going on in here. I clung to that idea that, that it would one day work. And I suppose it would give me oblivion, but that's not what it was giving me when it was really working. What it was giving me when it was really working was that sense that I belonged in the world, that this was, I was all right, I didn't have that for many years before I quit drinking, before I got to LEA. Okay, it says the tragic situation has already arrived in practically every case long before it's suspected. Then we got these squiggly lines again, so it must be important. The fact is that most alcoholics, for reasons yet obscure, have lost the power of choice in drink. Have you lost the power of choice of whether or not you will take a drink? How many times do you hear people say, I choose not to drink today? If I choose not to drink today, I'm not powerless if I think that's going to hold water. Oh, now, if I have this power greater than myself, can I choose? Or is that really a personal choice? Or is that a condition? Is there a condition reached in Alcoholics Anonymous where there's no need for a choice? Not only do I not drink, I don't want to drink, and I've got no reason for it. I'm getting that thing that it gave me. Have you lost the power of choice in drink? I mean, that is a super important question. What does it mean? What does it mean to think to not admit that I'm powerless over alcohol? Well, it means getting up in the morning and thinking, well, I'm too busy to pray. I don't need to meditate. I don't want to go to a meeting, read the book, take the steps. I don't want to help that alcoholic. I got stuff to do. I'm too busy to do a 12-step call. That's what half measures or this idea that I have a choice of whether or not I'll drink looks like in my life. And the next thing you know, it's been however many years, and I've observed this many times in Alcoholics Anonymous, and they disappear and they come back and they've been drunk after 20 years of sobriety. It's because they thought they had a choice. Does that make sense? Thought they had a choice. If you ask them, why did you drink? Well, I thought I could choose not to, If they really tell the truth, they believe that. How do they believe that? Well, I didn't want to do these things. I didn't want to pause when agitated and doubtful. I didn't want to ask for direction in the morning. I didn't want to carry a vision of God's will. I didn't want to go to the district meeting. I didn't want to be of service, I don't want to be on the steering committee. I don't want to chair the meeting. On and on and on and on. I don't want to talk to the newcomer. I don't want to put my hand out. I want to come over here, bitch about what a sorry meeting that was. That's what alcoholism looks like. It looks like that in me. And why would I do those things? Because I believe deep down, my actions are telling you, I think I have a choice where drink is concerned. I don't have to say the words. I mean, if you ask me, I'm doing all that shit and I'm thinking, oh, you ask me, oh, do you have are you powerless over? Oh, yeah, I'm powerless over alcohol. Absolutely. You could in the next breath say, well, why are you doing all the shit you're doing then, Mark? I mean, what are you doing? Why would you do that if you were powerless and you know where that's going to take you? With a clear mind, you understand where that's going to take you. Pretty soon, I get spiritually sick enough that obsession returns and I drink. So that is a really important, the question of choice is really important that I get clear on that. And it doesn't have to be one way. I just need to be damn clear on it. I mean, maybe you and your higher power and the way you relate to that higher power, you describe that as choice. I mean, I got no qualms with that. It's just, I just want to be really clear about where I'm at with choice and drink. Our so-called willpower becomes practically non-existent. Have you ever, here's the problem. I got people around me who have willpower. Not so much anymore because I hang out with all you people. But when I was in business, there were people that would decide to do something and by God, just do it. They didn't need nobody it was just like, I mean, like he's saying, who are you people? And they were gonna be this, And people I went to school with that were in from my community and they were gonna go do this. And they went and did that and they retired doing that. I was gonna do this and I wind up way off over here somewhere. Out in left field. So my willpower wasn't working. Not only where alcohol was concerned, but the ability to live by spiritual principles or in a manner that would allow me to maintain a condition that didn't force me to drink. And then it says we're unable at certain times to bring into our consciousness with sufficient force the memory or suffering or humiliation of even a week or a month ago. Are you without defense against the first drink? I mean, these are questions that I need to answer internally. I need to go into my experience and answer that question. Am I without defense against the first drink? The more powerless I am, the more access I have to power. Because to me, and this is my experience, when I have personal power or the delusion of it, I begin to manage. I'm going to start managing. Pretty soon, I'm going to be managing you, not only my life, but you, your life, how you ought to be doing it, and what you ought to be doing. So am I without defense against the first drink? And there are, I suppose, people who have personal power. It's been the longer I stay in Alcoholics Anonymous, the more I think that's a delusion for me. It's delusional to think I have personal power to live in a way which does not require me to drink. And that means pausing when agitated and doubtful. That means getting up in the morning and asking God, when coming to and saying, saying a prayer first thing, thanking God that I woke up. I didn't even bring my own consciousness about. And it does mention this consciousness, and that's a great question. Where is my consciousness? Where is it today? What do I do? What am I conscious of? One of the things that Alcoholics Anonymous does is it changes the consciousness of who I am in relation to the world, in relation to myself, to you, to alcohol, to money, my job, home, family, all of that. The almost certain consequences that follow taking even a glass of beer do not crowd into the mind to deter us. Do you ever take a drink thinking, I probably shouldn't do this? If these thoughts occur, they are hazy and readily supplanted with the old threadbare idea that we shall handle ourselves like other people. Oh yeah. There's a complete failure of the kind of defense that keeps one from putting his hand on a hot stove. You ever put your hand on a hot stove? Did you do it right after that again? The alcoholic may say to himself in the most casual way, it won't burn me this time. Here's how. Or perhaps he doesn't think at all. How often have some of us begin to drink in this nonchalant way? After the third or fourth, pounded on the bar and said to ourselves, for God's sakes, how did I ever get started again? Only to have that thought supplanted by, well, I'll stop at the sixth, or what's the use anyhow? You ever been struck drunk? I've been struck drunk. Did you ever get struck sober? You know, if I would have known that I was gonna stop drinking, I would have got good and drunk, even more drunk. I didn't realize that that was gonna be it. I didn't realize that. I didn't realize prior to October the 21st that I was not gonna be drunk anymore. I didn't realize that. Basically sober, struck sober. I didn't wasn't some big combative decision or some shit like that. I didn't even know. Well, I've been drunk that way too. I've been struck drunk. Didn't even know. Yeah. Well, when this sort of thinking is fully established in an individual with alcoholic tendencies, do you got some alcoholic tendencies? You may be have placed yourself beyond human aid. Have you? Is there human aid that can solve your drinking problem? Well, unless locked up or die, you may go permanently insane. Is that attractive to you? Is that someplace you want to go? These stark and ugly facts have been confirmed by legions of alcoholics throughout history. But for the grace of God, there would have been thousands of more convincing demonstrations. So many want to stop but cannot. Do you want to stop deep down within yourself? Then it says there is a solution. Do you believe that? Then it says you ain't gonna like it. It says almost none of us like the self-searching, the leveling of our pride, the confessions of shortcomings, which the process requires for its successful consummation. Am I willing to do that? Am I willing to do this self-searching, level my pride, admission of my shortcomings? Am I willing to do those things? And have you seen it work in others? Have you come to believe in the hopelessness and futility of life as you've been living it? Even if you're sober, do you believe that will eventually, if I don't grow any further, that that's going to be futile and hopeless? It'll become that. No. When, therefore, we were approached by those in whom the problem had been solved, there was nothing left for us to do but pick up a simple kit of spiritual tools laid at our feet. We have much of heaven and have been rocketed into the fourth dimension of existence of which we had not even dreamed. Anybody got some fourth dimension stuff going? Fourth dimension. What do they mean by that? Fourth dimension.
Out of this.
You don't want to tell anybody because it might stop. I've had that feeling. Yeah. I don't want to say anything or do anything. I just want it to be right here like it is. Hmm. Okay. Anybody else? No? Then it says the great fact is just this and nothing less. The people that wrote this book have had deep, effective spiritual experiences, which has revolutionized their whole attitude towards life, toward our fellows, and toward God's universe. Are you interested in some of that? The central fact of the people that wrote this book's life today is the absolute certainty that our Creator has entered into our hearts and lives in a way which is indeed miraculous. Is that lives or lives? Or both? So if it's entered into my heart, where should I look for God? Within. within. When I pray, do I pray out here or do I pray in here? Pray to some power within myself. Later on, it's going to tell the people who wrote this book, say, well, that's the only place we were able to find it. One of the great, I guess, I don't know what you would call it, truths about this process is if I find the problem within myself, I'll seek the solution within myself. If the problem is in my circumstance, in my situation, then that's where I'm gonna seek it. And so here I am thinking, well, I need to be able to pay my bills. I need more money. Problem is out here, and I go get more money, and I still got a problem. So it's really important for me to discover that this is an internal problem, that alcoholism is not in a bottle, it's in me. The central fact of our lives today is the absolute certainty that the Creator has entered into our hearts and lives in a way which is indeed miraculous. He has commenced to accomplish those things for us which we could never do by ourselves. Number one was drinking. Number two, maybe 2, 3, 4, 5, and 6 is a life that I want to live in. The ability to be alone with myself, not be climbing the wall, to be able to relate to other people, to communicate, to have humor in my day, to seek power through this God that I found in here. Those are some of the things that I could never do by myself. And I certainly couldn't stand up or sit up here and talk to you about, this stuff. I mean, who would want to? Now I could talk to you all day about what a wonderful person I was, even though I was a POS, or my success. I mean, that would be so easy to talk about my success if I had any. That would be easy. But talk to you about this, about my failure. That was no way I could have done that. Are you serious alcoholic as the people that wrote this book? Do you believe there's a middle of the road solution? What is a middle of the road solution?
Just having a meeting.
Do what?
More steps not helping you guys.
Anybody else? What about not spending any time with God? Is that a half measure?
Doing half of the steps, 6 out of 12 or something like that.
Not seeing unity as and participating in my life like the traditions asked me to do in my relationship. Is that a half measure? What about concepts for world service and not being familiar with that? Is that a half measure? Yeah. Now, what about arguing with people? Is that a half measure? So all of these are middle of the road solutions, man. That's a middle of the road thing. I think I'm going to win this damn argument, and that's going to take me somewhere that I want to go. And it's just there's no truth in that. First off, I ain't going to win. I don't know if you argue with the people I argue with, but there's scant chance of winning. I'm just joking. We were in a position where life was becoming impossible. Have you had that experience? And if we pass through a region which there is no return to human aid, what about that? Human aid. Do I go to the doctor and get fixed? What about the people in the meeting? Or what about myself? Those are all human aids. Do I need those things? Absolutely. I need those things. Because if I don't do those things, you know, they tell you, go read the book, take the steps, you know, go to meetings, get into service. None of those things are going to keep me sober. Does that surprise you? But if I don't do those things, I'm probably not going to find a power that will. Those are the things. Those are the things that power that's within me can express itself into my life. Those are that's how I maintain a conscious contact, a relationship with a power greater than myself. All right, we got two alternatives here. We can go on to the bitter end, blotting out the consciousness of our intolerable situation. Do you want that one? Or we can accept spiritual help. Do what?
That's the bar door.
Number 3, when I first read that, was my first.
Yeah. Yeah. I mean, I tried to do both and I had failed at both. And they gave me two alternatives. I'd tried spiritual help before I ever got here. And I'd tried to drink enough to blot out my intolerable situation. None of those, that didn't work, either one of them. They give me two options and that I've tried and neither one worked. Why is that? Why didn't spiritual help work? Well, I wasn't either. Well, I didn't have the problem. It's like Dr. Bob, you know, he'd repeatedly tried spiritual things, but when Bill said, "Hey, look here, you might have this alcoholism thing," you know, he recovered once he got the problem. Once that was well defined. Okay, this we did because we honestly wanted to and were willing to make the effort. Does that describe you? Do you honestly want to do this? And are you willing to make the effort? I don't know any, there's a lot of people in this group who are willing to be a guide to help, to guide you through this. If you honestly want to and are willing to make the effort, there are a lot of people in here that can help you do that. Then it says a certain American businessman had ability, good sense, and high character. For years, he floundered from one sanitarium to another. He had consulted the best-known American psychiatrist, then gone to Europe, placing himself in the care of the celebrated physician, the psychiatrist Dr. Young, who prescribed for him. Though experience had made him skeptical, he finished his treatment in unusual confidence. His physical and mental condition were unusually good. Above all, he believed that he had acquired such a profound knowledge of the inner workings of his mind and its hidden springs that relapse was unthinkable. Nevertheless, he was drunk in a short time. More baffling still, he could give himself no satisfactory explanation for his fall. So he thought, well, this human power, this Carl Jung, he can solve my problem. And knowledge, his own human power. And this, so he returned to the doctor, whom he admired, and asked him point blank why he couldn't recover. He wished above all things to regain self-control. He seemed quite rational and well balanced with respect to other problems, yet he had no control whatever over alcohol. Why was this? He begged the doctor to tell him the whole truth, and he got it. The doctor's judgment was that he was utterly hopeless. He could never regain his position in society, and he would have to place himself under lock and key or hire a bodyguard if he expected to live long. That was the great physician's opinion. This guy's Roland Hazard. That's his name. What a name for an alcoholic. Roland Hazard. And this was before AA. I mean, he's talking about this is before Alcoholics Anonymous. Can you imagine what it was like prior to AA? Can you imagine this damn many drunks in this town? And I don't mean just drinkers, I mean town drunks. But the man still lives and is a free man. He doesn't need a bodyguard, nor is he confined. He can go anywhere on this earth other free men may go without disaster, provided he remains willing to maintain a certain simple attitude. What do you think that attitude is? A position. A position in relationship. Attitude, it's kind of an aeronautical term. It's not my demeanor. It's they have a position with the horizon. They have a relationship to it. Angle of approach.
Is that cornerstone you're gonna be talking about?
Not yet. I guess it does kind of allude to it. Some of our alcoholic readers may think they can do without spiritual help. Is that you? Can you do without spiritual help? I mean, this is a serious question. Can you do it without spiritual help? Let us tell you the rest of the conversation our friend had with his doctor. The doctor said you have the mind of a chronic alcoholic. This doctor has never seen one single case recover where that state of mind existed to the extent that it does in this Roland Hazard fella. Our friend felt as though the gates of hell had closed on him with a clang. He said to the doctor, "Is there no exceptions?" "Yes," replied the doctor, "there is. Exceptions to cases such as yours have been occurring since early times. Here and there, once in a while, alcoholics have had what are called vital spiritual experiences. To this doctor, these occurrences seem a phenomenon. They appear to be in the nature of huge emotional displacements and rearrangements. Ideas, emotions, and attitudes, which were once the guiding forces in their lives of these men, are suddenly cast to one side, and a completely new set of conceptions of motives begin to dominate them. In fact, his doctor says he's been trying to produce some such emotional rearrangement within Roland. With many individuals, the methods which he employed are successful, but he's never been successful with an alcoholic of your description. So what are today, throughout this day, what were the ideas, emotions, and attitudes that were the guiding force in your life today? What drove me through today? What dominated my time, my mind, my consciousness, my thinking? Well, if that hadn't been cast to one side, if it wasn't different today than when I was drinking, you think I might be headed for a drink without knowing it. So it's a pretty good thing to look at. What is driving me today? What drives me today? Am I out to get money?
Maybe service and duty and love.
Service, duty, and love? Is that is that what I'm after? Peace?
What about the three types of society?
Yeah. I want to be involved in all three sides. Absolutely. So it's good to look at that. Because they're already telling me, Mark, you don't even have to think to drink. You're just gonna, you just wind up drunk. Once a condition is reached, I drink. That's it. I mean, this condition is reached in me. There's no question. I'm gonna get drunk. I don't think I'm gonna get drunk. I don't want to get drunk, but that condition, that spiritual condition, the obsession returns and I can't think of anything else. So it's important for me to look at this spiritual experience where these things were cast to one side. They were cast out. Upon hearing this, our friend was somewhat relieved, for he reflected that after all, he was a good church member. But his hope, however, was destroyed by the doctors telling him that his religious convictions are very good. In his case, they didn't spell the necessary vital spiritual experience. So one of the things that happened here is this Dr. Carl Jung, he knew about our mind, and he just admitted his own powerlessness. You remember Dr. Silkworth said, "Hey, I know what you need. I know what's wrong with you, but I can't make that happen." He admitted his powerlessness, and so did Harry Tebow. Here was the terrible dilemma which our friend found himself when he had an extraordinary experience, which, as we have already told you, made him a free man. We, in our turn, sought the same escape with all the desperation of a drowning man. What seemed at first a flimsy reed. Anybody ever heard of Flimsy Reed? Yeah, they're the burrito makers. Has proved to be the loving and powerful hand of God. A new life has been given us, or if you prefer, a design for living that really works. The distinguished American psychologist William James, in his book Varieties of Religious Experiences, indicates a multitude of ways in which men have discovered God. We have no desire to convince anyone that there is only one way by which faith can be acquired. If what we have learned, felt, and seen means anything at all, it means that all of us, whatever our race, creed, color, are children of a living creator with whom we may form a relationship upon simple and understandable terms as soon as we are willing and honest enough to try. Am I willing and honest enough to try to develop this relationship with a power greater than myself? Am I willing to do whatever that takes? Um, Those having religious affiliations will find here nothing disturbing to their beliefs or ceremonies. There is no friction among us over such matters. Are there people here who belong to churches? And yeah, do you find any friction between this and your church?
This makes that better.
We think it no concern of ours what religious bodies our members identify themselves with as individuals. This should be an entirely personal affair, which each one decides for himself in light of past association or present choice. Not all of us join religious bodies, but most of us favor such memberships. In the following chapter, there appears an explanation of alcoholism as we understand it. Then, a chapter addressed to the agnostic. Many who once were in that class are now among our members. Surprisingly enough, we find such convictions no great obstacles to a spiritual experience. They're saying, okay, if you're an atheist or an agnostic, you can still have a spiritual experience. There's not a barrier to that. Further on, clear-cut directions are given showing how we have recovered. These are followed by 42 personal experiences. Each individual in the personal stories describes in his own language and from his own point of view the way he established his relationship with God. These give a fair cross-section of our membership and a clear-cut idea of what actually happened in their lives. We hope no one will consider these self-revealing accounts in bad taste. Our hope is that many alcoholic men and women desperately in need will see these pages, and we believe that it is only by fully disclosing ourselves and our problems that they will be persuaded to say, yes, I am one of them too. I must have this thing. Do you believe you're an alcoholic? Go back to the top of 23 because I forgot to put in there the pages 23 through 43. It's where we're going to look at the mind, the mental part of alcoholism. We're almost there, so it's a great place to stop.